The twin sons of Zarian cast long shadows across the mining settlement as Nira clutched her children closer to her trembling body. The marketplace buzzed with harsh whispers that cut deeper than any blade. Her youngest daughter Kira pressed against her worn cloak, while her son Davon tried to appear brave, despite his hollow cheeks and sunken. Without a mate, she was nothing in their society. The law was clear and merciless. A female, without male protection, had no rights, no voice, no worth. Her husband Tail had died in the mine collapse 3 cycles ago, leaving behind only debts and shame. The creditors had taken their home, their possessions, everything except the threadbare clothes on there. Nira approached the grain vendor with what little dignity remained. Her stomach had been empty for 2 days while her children survived on scraps and rainwater. The vendor's expression twisted with disgust as she neared his stall. The smell of roasted seeds made her mouth water, but his sneer reminded her of her place. "Get away from here, widow woman." He spat the words like poison. "Your kind brings bad luck to honest traders." Nira's cheeks burned with humiliation, but she pressed forward for her children's sake. "Please, sir, just a handful of grain. My little ones haven't eaten." The vendor raised his hand, threatening to strike. "Move along before I call the enforcers." The crowd gathered like scavengers, sensing weakness. Their eyes held no mercy, only cruel satisfaction at watching someone fall further into despair. Nira stumbled backward, pulling her children away from the hostile faces. Davon looked up at her with questions she couldn't answer while Kira began to cry softly. Her legs gave way beneath the weight of hunger and desperation. She collapsed onto the dusty ground while the crowd laughed and pointed. Some threw small stones, muttering about worthless females who couldn't even care for their offspring. The hot sun beat down mercilessly as consciousness began to slip away from her grasp. Through fading vision, she saw her children's faces filled with terror. They shook her shoulders, calling "Mama, Mama," but she had nothing left to give. The world grew dim around the edges as cruel laughter echoed in her ears. This was how it would end, she realized. Not with dignity or peace, but with mockery and abandonment. Then a shadow fell across her face. Different footsteps approached, steady and purposeful, unlike the shuffling of the crowd. A voice spoke words in the common tongue, but with an accent she'd never heard before. The tone was gentle, yet firm, carrying an authority that made the laughter stop. "She needs water immediately." Nira forced her eyes open and saw something impossible. A figure unlike any she'd seen before knelt beside her. His skin was pale, his build different from her people. Most striking were his eyes, which held no contempt or disgust, only genuine concern for a stranger's suffering. The stranger's Aravel Marcus Webb had traveled across 3 star systems, but had never seen cruelty displayed so openly. The mining colony on Zarian was his final stop before returning to Earth, and he'd witnessed enough injustice in the marketplace to last several lifetimes. When he saw the alien woman collapse with her children crying beside her, something deep inside him snapped. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring their gasps and whispers. It's about the strange human. His medical training kicked in as he assessed her condition. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, and exhaustion painted a clear picture. He lifted his water container to the woman's lips while her children watched with desperate hope. "Drink slowly," he instructed, though he doubted she understood his words. Her tongue was swollen and cracked, but she managed a few precious sips. The children reached for the container with trembling hands, and Marcus didn't hesitate to share his supply. Their relief was immediate and heartbreaking. The crowd's murmur grew louder as they recognized him as human. Stories of his kind were rare in this sector, mostly tales of warriors and explorers. Few had seen one in person, and their reactions ranged from curiosity to suspicion. Marcus ignored them all, focusing entirely on the family before him. "What is your name?" he asked gently. The woman's eyes flickered with confusion, then understanding. "Nira," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "These are my children, Kira and Davon." Marcus nodded, feeling an unexpected protectiveness surge through his chest. "They're beautiful," he said honestly, and watched Nira's eyes fill with tears at this simple kindness. Commotion erupted as 3 enforcers pushed through the crowd. Their leader, a scarred alien named Vulcan, pointed an accusing finger at Marcus. Human, you interfere with our customs? This female has no male guardian, and therefore no rights. Remove yourself before you face consequences. Marcus stood slowly, his full height impressive, even among the taller aliens. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to command. She's under my protection now. The crowd gasped at this unprecedented declaration. Nira stared up at him in shock, understanding the magnitude of what he'd just proclaimed. Vulcan's face darkened with rage. You cannot claim what belongs to our law. She is nothing without proper mate bond. Marcus stepped closer, his presence radiating calm strength. Then perhaps your law needs changing. Nira felt her heart race at his words. No one had ever spoken against the ancient customs. The danger he was placing himself in made her dizzy with fear and gratitude. The standoff stretched taut as wire. Marcus reached down, offering his hand to Nira. The gesture was simple but revolutionary. To accept meant abandoning everything she'd known about her place in society. To refuse meant watching her children starve. Her fingers trembled as she reached up and grasped his warm, strong hand. The moment their skin touched, something electric passed between them. Nira felt it in her core, a recognition that transcended species and culture. Marcus's eyes widened slightly as if he'd felt it too. Whatever this connection was, it changed everything in an instant. The crowd erupted in chaos, but all Nira could focus on was the human's steady gaze, promising safety and something more. Hearts across the void. 3 days passed since Marcus had claimed Nira and her children under his protection. He'd secured temporary quarters in the human diplomatic section, where Xenian law couldn't easily reach them. The small apartment felt like paradise after their time sleeping in alleyways. For the first time in cycles, Nira watched her children sleep peacefully, with full bellies. Marcus worked tirelessly arranging documentation and supplies while Nira slowly recovered her strength. Their conversations grew longer each day as they shared stories of their worlds. She learned he was a captain in the human exploration fleet mapping new trade routes. He discovered she'd been a teacher before her mate's death, when such things were allowed to females with proper status. The cultural barriers between them seemed to dissolve with each shared meal and quiet evening. Marcus's gentleness with Kira and Davon touched Nira's heart deeply. He taught them simple human games and showed them images of Earth's blue skies and green forests. The children adored him, calling him Captain Mark with bright smiles. One evening after the children were asleep, Nira found Marcus on the small balcony, staring at the stars. The mining colony's lights couldn't dim the spectacular display of distant suns. She approached hesitantly, still adjusting to the freedom of moving without permission or fear. Marcus turned at her footsteps, his expression softening. You should rest, he said quietly. Tomorrow we meet with the colonial administrator about permanent sanctuary. Nira moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why risk everything for strangers? Marcus was quiet for a long moment before answering. Because no one should be discarded for circumstances beyond their control. His words were simple, but the emotion behind them made her heart race. Because your children deserve better than a world that calls them worthless. Nira felt tears gathering as she realized the depth of his compassion. She reached out tentatively, touching his hand where it rested on the balcony rail. His skin was warm and alien, but somehow familiar. Marcus's breath caught at the contact, his eyes meeting hers in the starlight. The space between them seemed charged with possibilities neither fully understood. You're not like anyone I've known, she whispered. Marcus's thumb traced gentle patterns across her knuckles. You're stronger than you realize, Nira. What your people call worthless, I call precious. The words broke something open inside her chest. She'd been starved for kindness for so long that his tenderness felt overwhelming. Slowly, as if afraid she might disappear, Marcus lifted his free hand to touch her cheek. Nira leaned into the caress, her eyes closing at the unfamiliar sensation of being cherished. When she opened them again, his face was closer, filled with an emotion she'd seen in her dreams, but never expected to experience again. Their lips met softly, hesitantly across the vast divide of species and culture. The kiss was gentle exploration rather than demand. Nira felt her world shift on its axis, as warmth bloomed in her chest. When they parted, both were breathing unsteadily, their foreheads touching in the intimate darkness. "This changes everything," Marcus whispered. Nira nodded, unable to speak past the emotion choking her throat. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Love had found her in the most unlikely place with the most impossible person. The Colonial Council chamber filled with tension as Nira stood beside Marcus facing 7 stern judges. News of their relationship had spread quickly through the settlement, creating division and outrage. The traditionalists demanded punishment, while a growing minority whispered support for change. Devon and Kira waited in the diplomatic quarters under guard for their own protection. "Hi," Arbiter Zealand spoke with authority that echoed off the stone walls. "Human Captain Webb, you stand accused of violating sacred customs by claiming an unmated female. Nira Terran, you face charges of abandoning proper social order. How do you answer these accusations?" Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. "I answer that love recognizes no boundaries of species or custom. Nira Terran is my chosen partner, and I will defend her right to choose her own path." Gasps echoed through the packed chamber as spectators reacted to his bold declaration. Nira found her voice despite. "Honored arbiters, I was dying in your streets with my children. This human offered life when my own people offered only scorn. If choosing survival and love is a crime, then I am guilty." Her words carried more strength than she'd ever possessed before Marcus came into her. Life Arbiter Corex leaned forward, his expression hostile. "The law exists to maintain order, female. Without male guidance, you are incomplete, unstable. Your children need proper structure, not this alien influence." Nira felt anger flare in her chest at his dismissive tone. "My children needed food and shelter," she replied firmly. "They needed someone to tell them they mattered. If that makes me incomplete in your eyes, then your eyes are blind to what truly matters." Several observers murmured agreement, while others hissed disapproval. The trial continued for hours, with witnesses called to testify about Nira's character and Marcus's interference with local customs. The grain vendors spoke against them, while surprising voices like Teacher Marana defended Nira's worthiness. The debate revealed deep fractures in their society's beliefs. During a recess, Marcus and Nira found themselves alone in a small anteroom. The stress of the trial had worn them both thin, but their connection remained strong. Nira collapsed into Marcus's arms, seeking comfort in his embrace. He held her close, stroking her hair while whispering reassurances. "Whatever. I decide we face it together," he murmured against her temple. Nira tilted her head to look into his eyes, seeing the determination and love that had saved her family. She reached up to caress his face, marveling at how perfectly they fit together despite their differences. Their kiss was desperate and passionate, born from uncertainty about their future. Marcus lifted her onto the small table, his hands gentle but urgent as they explored each other. Nira had never felt such desire, such complete connection with another being. Every touch spoke of devotion that transcended worlds. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Nira rested her forehead against Marcus's chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady. "Whatever happens, I don't regret choosing you," she whispered. Marcus tipped her chin up to meet his gaze. "Nor do I regret choosing you and your children," he replied. "You've shown me what it means to fight for something truly worth saving." They held each other close, knowing that, in moments, they would face the council's judgment that would determine their future. Together, the chamber doors opened, and they walked hand in hand back to face whatever verdict awaited them. Their love had already conquered the impossible. Now they would learn if society could evolve to accept what the heart knew was right. New Horizons Together 6. Months later, Nira stood in the garden behind their new home watching Marcus teach Kira and Devon to throw a human sport ball. The Colonial Council had ultimately ruled in their favor by a narrow margin, establishing precedent for cross-species partnerships. The decision hadn't been without consequences, but change was slowly taking root. Their wedding had been a simple ceremony attended by the growing number of supporters who'd rallied to their cause. Teacher Marana had officiated while Devon proudly carried the rings and Kira scattered flower petals. It was the first recorded human-Zarian marriage in the sector's history, Marcus approached, wrapping his arms around Nira from behind as they watched their children play. She leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth that had become her anchor. "Your thoughts seem far away," he murmured into her hair. Nira smiled, placing her hands over his where they rested on her growing belly. "Just remembering how desperate everything seemed that day in the marketplace," she replied. "If someone had told me I'd find love and family with a human, I'd have called them mad." Marcus chuckled softly, his breath tickling her ear. "The universe works in mysterious ways. Their second child would arrive within the season, a symbol of hope for others who dared to love. Across the boundaries of species and tradition, already they'd received messages from mixed couples throughout the sector seeking advice and support. What had begun as personal survival was becoming a movement." Kira ran toward them laughing as Davon chased her with the ball. "Mama, Captain Mark, we're hungry," she announced breathlessly. Nira and Marcus exchanged amused glances before heading inside to prepare the evening meal. The children chattered excitedly about their day at the new integrated school where human and Zarian children learned together. After dinner, Marcus helped tuck the children into bed while Nira watched from the doorway. Seeing him read bedtime stories in his accented Zarian made her heart swell with love. When he finished, Davon hugged him tight, saying, "Good night, Papa Mark." The title still brought tears to Nira's eyes. They settled together on their bed, Marcus's hand resting on Nira's rounded stomach, feeling the baby's movements. "Our little one's active tonight," he observed with wonder. Nira covered his hand with hers, enjoying the intimate moment of connection. "She moves like she's eager to see this world we're building." Marcus kissed her temple, then her lips with the tenderness that had first captured her heart. "You've given me everything I never knew I was searching for," he whispered. "A family, a purpose, something worth fighting to protect." Nira's eyes glistened with happy tears. "And you've given me a second chance at life," she replied. "Shown me that worth isn't determined by others, but by how we choose to love." Their kiss deepened, filled with promise and possibility. Outside their window, the twin sunset, painting the sky in brilliant colors, while inside there, home love continued to grow and flourish. Against all odds, the future stretched before them, uncertain but bright with potential. Their children would grow up in a world slowly learning to accept difference. Their love story would inspire others to reach across divides of culture and species. Most importantly, they would face whatever came next together as a family bound not by law or tradition, but by choice and unwavering devotion.